A 4-day long freak off? Guilty. Diddy is guilty. That is insane. So for those of you who haven't been able to keep up on the Diddy trials, Cassie took the stand today, and they asked her what was the longest freak off she participated in. And she said 4 days long, leaving her needing to recover from dehydration and that stuff that they was using. Y'all thought y'all was out here doing something with them honey packs and them perkies, but 4 days long? It feels like elderly abuse for me to have to stay up past 11 o'clock at night. Okay? After 11, if I'm forced to stay awake, that needs to be reported to somebody. Now imagine having to be a participant at one of those parties for 96 hours. That is criminal. That is heinous. Lock him up and throw away the key. Lock him up and throw away the key. Jail!
And it's interesting how this man got away with it for this long. And people knew about it. People knew. It's interesting. And we are going to see the reaction of people who actually followed this case, because I never followed this case. And I'm standing with Cassie throughout all of this. And I'm like mind blown. I'm mind blown. You know? I can't believe this. Well, I can't believe it because it's Hollywood, because I'm sure that it has happened to many more others. And Cassie is one of those exceptions that gets to have a trial, because there are others who have gone through that and they're not even fortunate enough to stand a trial. So we're going to see. People are going to be reacting. I'm going to share that. I don't want to talk too much. But I am mind blown by the things that I'm constantly hearing, and people breaking down this case, and people just letting us know. Insane, mind blown. And you know what I'm thinking? I might be wrong, but I don't think this man is going to jail. I don't think this man is going to jail. I don't think this man will ever be arrested. I don't think this man will, even if he's arrested, he would have the same experience as other prisoners or inmates in jail, because his status speaks for him, and there are people who will protect him, mainly because they're trying to protect their interests as well and their own secrets as well. So yeah, let's watch the reaction, and let's watch the reaction, guys. I'm shocked. Let's watch people reacting to this. It's gonna be long, so bear with me. I won't be talking after this. I'm talking for the last time, I promise.
When Cassie first walked into the courtroom day 2 of the Diddy trial, you could hear a pin drop. Now, reportedly, Diddy and Cassie, before that, hadn't seen each other since 2018, but her gaze was fixed forward as she took the stand. Meanwhile, Diddy kept looking over, stealing glances at her. And I can only imagine how shocked she was when she finally did get a good look at him, because he was wearing a gray crew neck sweater and looked very different, not just from 2018, but from even a few months ago. The only person that I did notice that she was looking at is her husband, Alex. I also noticed that she kept fidgeting in her chair. Now, she is 8.5 months pregnant, but she was also sitting there for hours, getting question after question, and also having to recall a decade's worth of dark memories. When she's speaking, her tone is very matter of fact, and she also was pausing between her words, as if she was struggling to get the words out. She's also soft-spoken, but you could also hear her voice shake when she was recalling certain memories. She would also laugh nervously if she didn't understand something, or she would lose her train of thought and ask the prosecutor to ask her the question again. In the beginning, when she was sharing certain stories, her eyes would fill up with tears and she would dab a tissue occasionally, but then at one moment, she just broke down and really started crying. And in that moment, you could tell, even though she's in a better place now, she was crying for her younger self who loved a man so dearly and would do anything to please him. And inside the courtroom, there isn't much commotion. It is federal court, and they are very strict over there. If the judge is in the courtroom, shoop, it is silent. As far as reactions or facial expressions from Cassie's husband to Diddy's kids to the jury, everyone is really stoic. You're not seeing many facial expressions or reaction. At this moment, this jury is very hard to read. There were some raised eyebrows at times, for example. There was one jury member who was smirking when they kept going on and on about baby oil. There was one jury member who just kept going like this, and I couldn't tell if he was tired or if he just couldn't believe what he was hearing. And I did see one or two of them yawning, but you have to understand that they've been here for hours. There's also this one exchange that I thought was interesting where the second witness was on the stand. He's a male exotic dancer, and he was getting cross-examined by Diddy's attorney, Xavier Donaldson. And he asked the attorney if he wanted to clarify something, if he wanted him to clarify something. And he was like, nope, no thank you, and just kind of cut him off. And there were two black women in the jury that went, oh, when I tell you that's the most reaction I saw. As far as Diddy's kids go, 6 out of 7 of them were in the courtroom, along with the 7th child's mother. You want to note that the twins, who are 18 years old, and Chance Combs, who's 19 years old, the 3 girls, all left the courtroom when the second witness was called, who is the male exotic dancer. But they were there the next day during Cassie's testimony for the whole thing. I was in the courtroom as Cassie was testifying, so let me tell you guys everything that you didn't see or may have not heard, because it's a lot. I will say the most damning part of her testimony for me is when she describes a freak-off where Diddy and another man, an escort, are standing on top of her while she is laying on the floor high off of ecstasy, and they are urinating on her face to the point where she is choking on their pee. And to further give context, on the right-hand side of the court, seated, is her husband, Alex Fine. On the left-hand side, Diddy's 6 out of 7 kids are sitting in the courtroom as Cassie is describing having weekly freak-offs for years that would last 2, 3, one lasted up to 4 days. She talked about damaging hotel rooms so bad in one instance that they had to pay such a hefty fee because the hotel told them that they needed to completely redecorate the room after a freak-off. After a freak-off, there would be blood, urine, and lots of baby oil. There was so much baby oil. There was also so much baby oil talk to the point where the judge at one point told prosecutors, wrap it up. But before we even got there, a very pregnant Cassie was called to the stand. She was wearing a tight brown turtleneck dress that was hugging her baby bump. When she sat down, you could tell she was nervous. And if you couldn't, you quickly picked up on it, because once she started talking, you noticed that she paused a lot. She would sigh heavily before she answered a question. One of those moments was when she explained to the court that a year into their relationship, that Diddy had approached her with this fantasy that he had. He called it voyeurism, where he wanted to see her have sex with another man, later referred to as freak-offs. She said her stomach dropped. She was 22 years old. She described herself as very naive and a people pleaser. She said the only reason that she agreed to it is because she knew it would make him happy, and she was afraid what would happen if she said no. That's also around the time, she says, that he started to get abusive. Most of her testimony today was spent on talking about these freak-offs, the different escorts that they would use, the different hotels that they would use. She said that she would find escorts off of Craigslist and this escort service called Cowboys for Angels. And to describe them, they weren't the most attractive men, right? They were very average looking. Some of them weren't even conventionally attractive. One thing they had in common is most of them were black, because Diddy preferred for her black men with a big D, she said. At one point, Cassie broke down in tears when the prosecutor asked her, why didn't you leave? If the freak-offs, as you explained, were so disgusting and humiliating, why not leave? And she started crying and said that she was very deeply in love, and this was the only alone time that she could get with Diddy. And it got to a point where this was kind of the only emotional connection that she was getting from this man that she was dating. So much more that I'll cover in another video, including his incessant phone calls, him tracking her down with his security, and her never being able to escape. Cassie let out a heavy sigh. Ooh. Prosecutors asked about the first time that Diddy brought up the idea of a freak-off, except he didn't call it that. She says that within the first year of the relationship, he approached her about a fantasy that he has and called it voyeurism. He said that it would turn him on to see her have sex with another man. She was 22 at the time, and she says her stomach dropped. Except, in her own words, she actually said, "My stomach fell to my butt." She was nervous and confused. She says that she didn't understand how that could be a turn on, but also in a strange twist, she says that she felt the responsibility of him sharing that with her and that she didn't want to shame him. She said she loved him and she wanted to make him happy, so she hesitantly agreed. And within a few weeks, Diddy had already set up their first freak-off. She says that he assured her that they would hide their identity, so they wore masquerade masks, took ecstasy, and hired a male escort. She says afterwards she felt disgusted with herself, but then she realized how pleased he was, and then started to feel happy with herself because she realized that she did something right, which is please him. She says she realized very quickly that she didn't want to do freak-offs, but was in love and also didn't know what no would turn into. And then I noticed that she started fidgeting in her chair when she said that she didn't want to make him feel uncomfortable for knowing his secret. I do want to note that around this time is also when he started to get physically abusive. She also made a note that at this point in time, he had complete control over her entire career. She said she was super young, naive, a people pleaser, and she was worried that he would leave her, or worse, that he would use those tapes as blackmail. Because she says you never knew what Diddy would get. One was charming, the other was dark. Cassie described Diddy as polarizing. She says at times he would be charming, vibrant, and other times his eyes would go black and he would go into fits of uncontrollable rage, and the person she loved was no longer there. She says something as simple as making the wrong facial expression could get her hit in the face. She says he would constantly say, "Fix your face, watch your mouth." It could also be something completely unrelated, she said, a bad phone call or a business deal gone wrong, and he would take it out on her. She says she then learned how to manage his emotions, when to bring things up and when not to, but it was always in the back of her mind that she could get hit at any time. And when he did, she says that he used to mash her head, stomp her head, bust her lip, bruise her body, and drag her by the hair. She also says that she quickly picked up on his obsessive nature. She called him an incessant caller, meaning that if she didn't pick up the phone, he would keep calling, or have an assistant do the same. And if she never picked up the phone, well then an assistant or himself would show up at her front door. He even gifted her an apartment on the Upper West Side and had a key. In fact, throughout their entire relationship, they never lived together, but he always lived a block or maybe 10 minutes down the road. She also says that he wanted to know down to the minute what she was doing every day and gave her what she now refers to as busy work. Earlier in the relationship, he would give her tasks like writing music, meeting with producers, working on her album. He would fill up her day to make sure that she was being productive. But today, she refers to it as busy work because none of those albums saw the light of day. She thinks it was just a control mechanism so that he could keep track of her. And without new music, her fans moved on and her music career started to die. There were also plenty of modeling opportunities that she was getting approached with that he forced her to turn down. I do want to note an interesting exchange around this time. Basically, prosecutors asked Cassie, "Did Diddy kill your revenue stream because you could have been making money off of these albums that were never being released?" And in other words, she basically said, "Who said I made that much money off of the first one?" Which is very much in line with what past bad boy artists have also said. Cassie says the freak-offs had a certain smell and made a slight face as she described it. She said that she was often tasked with getting the supplies, and that included 10 bottles of large Johnson & Johnson brand baby oil. And so much baby oil was used. She said everyone had to be glistening, or Diddy would say, "Too dry, more baby oil." She said you could see it on the doorknobs, the curtains, the sheets, the furniture, the floor. She testified that at one time they even put an inflatable pool inside the hotel and filled it with baby oil. Then there was the Astroglide lubricant that always had to be present, the body odor that was masked with Glade candles, and at times, urine and period blood. She says despite calling downstairs for extra sheets so that she could protect the furniture, they would damage these rooms so badly that they would incur thousands of dollars in incidental charges. As I was looking into this, I came across this tweet from April of 2023, and this is months before Cassie filed her lawsuit in November of 2023, and months before anybody was talking about any kind of freak-off. It reads, "Diddy is a freak. I remember working at a hotel where he stayed. I had to take pictures of the room so they could charge him the incidental. Baby oil on the curtains, blunt guts, Ciroc, and all types of shit. I don't see Cassie, but I assume that's who he was with at the time." I will say the description in that tweet is spot on to how Cassie was describing how they would leave these hotel rooms. She testified that they would smoke, drink inside the hotel room, have sex marathons until Diddy finally said it was over. There would also be music and mood lighting. I came across this article from April of 2023 when Diddy did carpool karaoke with James Corden, and today it reads completely different. He tells James Corden that music is one of the most important ways for him to get things moving with his partner. Next on his list, though, was something a little less conventional. Instead of the typical romantic candle, Diddy says he opts for a red light bulb. I tried to find that clip, but the episode has since been deleted.
This topic's gonna be a little more serious, so forgive the tone, but he didn't do it. Y'all always trying to bring a black man down. Where's the evidence? Y'all believe these women too fast? These aren't really just phrases. They're emotional barricades built not to protect justice at all, but to protect identity from cracking. Because for a certain group of black men to admit that he did it means to ask what part of him might live in me. They defend the accused with ferocity because accountability feels like betrayal, and to believe the victim would mean reckoning with what they were silent about, what they joked about, what they witnessed but didn't stop, what they participated in directly or indirectly, or worse, what they survived but never admitted. This really isn't brotherhood. It's fear-based allegiance. It's just saying, I'd rather protect the myth of us than heal the truth of me. It's not that they believe in his innocence, right? It's that they've been taught if the system accuses him, then I must automatically disbelieve it no matter what. That's not protection. That's reactive trauma logic dressed in loyalty. So where does this group come from? So it comes from generations of unjust incarceration, state-sponsored surveillance, the historic disbelief of black male pain, and a lifetime of being told you are guilty until proven holy. And in that storm of injustice, they created a rule. We protect each other no matter what, no matter who. But the problem is, no matter who sometimes includes abusers. Sometimes it includes predators. Sometimes it includes men who harm while hiding inside the myth of their own victimhood. See, this self-affiliation feels like solidarity, but if your solidarity only activates when he's accused, never when she's broken, then what you've built isn't brotherhood. It's a burial ground. You didn't protect him. You didn't erase her. You didn't investigate. You dismissed. You didn't stay silent. You didn't stay silent out of uncertainty. You stayed silent because you feared your own reflection. He's not innocent because he's black. And you're not guilty because you see yourself in him. But if you silence every woman, every boy, every witness, then you're not defending a brother. You're defending your own refusal to heal. Okay, we're going to go through how to resolve this. Okay? Reflexive denial of harm done by a black man is rooted in fractured masculinity. That is where it's coming from. Some black men are not defending their brothers. They're defending their childhood self who was never protected. The lie is that defending us at all costs equals loyalty. Stop defending us at all costs. That does not equal loyalty. If you are defending the black man at all costs, that does not equal loyalty. The correction is this: loyalty without accountability is just complicity. Healing begins when we name our silence without flinching. Right? Community grief sessions with all men's circles to name, what did I witness but never name? What did I laugh at to belong? Who got hurt while I stayed loyal to the group? See, and the thing is, right, I don't want y'all to think that this is some kind of blanket thing. Every man has made mistakes. I remember literally telling a joke in high school, thinking it was a joke, and that girl hated every time I said it. Hated it. And I didn't find out until she was literally crying. And then when I found out, had to apologize and shit. That does not mean it's okay to defend a bully because I made a bad choice when I was 15. Do you see what I mean? It's the same thing. This applies also to discomfort. Discomfort may not be a crime, but it sure is worth an apology. And so if you made somebody uncomfortable, you may not have committed a crime. But this means it's okay for you to apologize and not defend an abuser. Different things, okay? Many men fear accountability because they associate it with being discarded, being publicly humiliated, being labeled no longer worthy. We need black-led models of restorative accountability where the goal is truth, repair, boundaries, and return if possible, not punishment. Okay? We need to build return protocols for those willing to do real work. public statements of harm, and community-led steps for reentry. If for those people, if you're that anxious, that's what we could do for you, right? Opportunities for the harmed, right, to be heard without being reharmed, right? But also, we need to reckon with gender abandonment. I wasn't protected, so how can I believe someone else deserves to be? Right? That's what happens a lot of the time with a black man. This creates resentment toward victims, especially women, because their pain triggers the unprocessed boy inside the man. Here's what you need to do if you have this problem. Who wasn't there for me? Why does believing her make me feel unsafe? What did I need that I never admitted? Intergenerational conversations. I will literally post this whole thing again. I just need people to understand that you do not need to defend an abuser. Just because you've made, right, or suffered a loss of innocence and mistakes and variance and any type of thing, you do not need to defend an abuser. You do not need to defend an assaulter. I don't want to make this video too long. I didn't even have a post plan for today, but I need men to understand. I need us to understand that just because we underwent mass betrayal, right, doesn't mean that no one shall ever betray us again. Somebody will. Bill Cosby betrayed us black men. R. Kelly betrayed us black men. All of those guys betrayed us. And we gotta grieve that. Instead of acting like because I wasn't protected, no one deserves protection. It's wrong. And it's not the right way to go about this. And literally, like, it makes me so sad, bro, because you only do this out of sheer woundedness. That is the only way that you get to this place. Woundedness. You don't get here out of solidarity. You think you're being in solidarity with your black brothers? No. You're being wounded. You're wounded. And you found everybody else with a wound and decided to protect yourselves. Didn't even commit a crime. Didn't even do everything. And now you're defending guys who did commit a crime. Just pisses me off, bro. It just pisses me off. That's it.
Cassie name dropped Britney Spears in the Diddy trial. So Cassie stated that Britney Spears was present at her 21st birthday party in 2007, which just so happened to be the night before the 2007 VMAs. And if you're too young to remember, 2007 VMAs was supposed to be Britney Spears' comeback with her Gimme More performance, but it was infamously known as one of her worst performances. Now, coincidentally, at Cassie's birthday party, TriStar Sports and Entertainment was also present. And if you don't know who they are, their name has been mentioned in the Diddy case several times. One of the times is for them being the overseers of the payments that were wired to Diddy's sex workers. And if you didn't know, they were also one of the hugest people to benefit from Britney Spears' conservatorship. They made $18 million off of her conservatorship. And then fans are looking back at it now, at her performance and how bad it was, thinking, what was said to her that night that made her perform so terribly the next day? Not only that, her hair was infamously horrible. Like, her hair, it looked like nobody did anything to it. If you can go back and watch the videos on YouTube. But y'all, I feel like there's going to be so many more people mentioned in this Diddy trial. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
It's only been 2 days of this trial, and already Cassie has made it to the witness stand. Now, before we get to Cassie's testimony, I need to make a few point of orders. First, the court is on recess right now for lunch, so we're going to get through everything before they come back. And second, shout out to Inner City Press because they are giving us the play-by-play coverage of the trial. And don't worry, I've already paid for the subscription so we can get the court transcripts so you guys didn't have to. Now, remember yesterday, we were getting through the testimony of the exotic dancer. The exotic dancer was being cross-examined by P. Diddy's attorneys. Now, you could pause to read these transcripts, but I'm going to summarize them for you really quickly so we can get right into Cassie's testimony. Essentially, P. Diddy's attorneys were trying to argue that the exotic dancer secretly wanted a relationship with Cassie, and that is why he turned state's evidence. The exotic dancer denied those allegations, but P. Diddy's attorneys pressed on, and they were trying to really make this case that he didn't actually care that she was being abused, allegedly, by P. Diddy, but he secretly wanted a relationship with her. Now, you can check out this court transcript above, but P. Diddy's attorneys say, you thought that you were in a relationship with Cassie, didn't you? The dancer said, no. The attorney replies back and says, you wanted to get her alone to date her? And the exotic dancer replied back, said, well, if she'd let me, I would have. And his attorneys replied back with, you'd get jealous of Mr. Combs? He replied and said no. Now, Diddy's attorneys also argued that P. Diddy, even though he was in the room watching them commingle, if you will. But he didn't direct them to do anything because remember, the federal prosecutors are stating that P. Diddy was the arbiter of all the things that was going on with Cassie. And so he was the power dynamic in the bedroom. So Diddy's attorneys are arguing and saying, well, he didn't really direct you to do different positions, did you? And the exotic dancer stood on business and said, yes, he did. He even directed me on how much baby oil that he was going to rub on us. Gross. Now let's get to Cassie's testimony because again, we're on a little bit of a time crunch and I want to hurry up and give this information to you before they come back from lunch. Now, in the beginning of this testimony, P. attorneys as well as prosecutors argued whether they wanted Cassie's husband to be in the courtroom for her testimony because they weren't entirely sure if they were going to bring him to the witness stand. So they're arguing that, but I don't really know how that cleared up. Now, right out the gate, they're already asking Cassie about that intercontinental altercation that she had had with Diddy, where he had dragged her by her hoodie. She told him that it was a freak off, and the attorney asked her, the prosecutor, let's be clear, the prosecutor is cross examining her first. The prosecutor asked her, what does this entail? Cassie replies back and says, hiring of an escort and setting up, basically setting up the oil and all the other stuff. Now the prosecutor comes back and asks, how did you feel about this at first? Cassie said, confused, nervous, and I wanted to make him happy. The attorney replies and said, did you agree to one when you first proposed? She said, yes. And then there was more. And it wasn't something I wanted to do, at least not that frequently. Now, just below, the prosecutor asked her, do you know what no would have turned into? Basically saying, do you know if saying no to Diddy was going to turn into something bad? She said, it means it would make him angry. Now, the attorney asked her, well, what does that mean? Again, she says, make him angry. He said, were you afraid what would happen if you said no? Cassie replies back and said, through time, he had blackmail material. The prosecutor replied back and said, what did you give the government? And Cassie replied, laptops. Oh, now she had the laptops, friend. Now, just above, they're going over some documents and pictures that Cassie had submitted to the federal prosecutors. And in one of the pictures, she said it was in 2004 and she was with somebody by the name of Carrie Morgan. Now, next up, they asked Cassie, when did she sign up for Bad Boy? She said 2006. It was supposed to be a 10-album deal. And as we all know, Cassie only put out one album and literally one hit song. Now, they show Cassie another photo. And in the photo, Cassie said it's Kim Porter and she was Sean's ex from before me and the mother of his children. Now, in the photo, apparently they were in Las Vegas. They were celebrating her 21st birthday, and it was a part of the VMA Awards. She stated that Sean Combs kissed her in the bathroom and she ran out back to her hotel. She proceeds to say that she headed back to New York and then she met him at the Trump Hotel. Now, they go on in this section here to ask her about the age difference, which is about 17 years. Now, fast forward to after they meet at the Trump Hotel, she states that she meets him in Miami with her friend Carrie Morgan and he has a yacht. She gets on the yacht and he gives her blue ecstasy called dolphin ecstasy. And then she stated that they had, well, you know. Now, up next, prosecutors asked Cassie about their relationship. She said it was in secret because at the time he was still publicly dating Kim Porter. And then he asked her about the dynamics of her relationship, and she says it was actually really fun at the time. Now, Cassie goes on to look at more images of them at a Halloween party between 2007 or 2008, and she stated that at the time of them hanging out, his mood would swing. Now, in this portion here, Cassie goes on to say that, well, he seemed zoned out, and they said, how did that impact you? She said, greatly. The next thing I knew, that he would hit me in the face. She goes on to say that it was a lot of psychological abuse. So after he would hit her, he would tell her to watch her mouth and fix her face, like treating her like a child, but you shouldn't hit children. Now, in this very last bit, they asked her, did Sean P. Diddy Combs ask you to move closer to him? She said, yes, he wanted me closer to be near him so he can be close to his children as well. They asked her about how many songs that she had written. She said hundreds, and most of them were never released. Some of them were released on mixtapes, others were leaked online, but that was the gist of her music career. They asked her how many of her album deals were not released. She said 9. They asked her, did you get paid for them? She said no. They then asked her about who paid her rent. She said Sean P. Diddy Combs paid her rent until she moved into a small studio where she paid her rent herself. Prosecutors asked, how did you pay your rent? She said, well, at the time I had money. Because remember, she was at the height of her career with her one album. And she also stated that she wanted to maintain some sort of control of paying her own rent. They then asked her, did Sean Combs approve of her paying her own rent? She says yes at the time. Now, just before break, prosecutors asked her basically, well, what job did you have since you weren't putting out music? She said basically freak offs were her full-time job. She goes on to state there was no time to do anything else but do them and then recover. Prosecutors asked her how much time in a week would freak offs take. She said the longest one was 4 days, significant periods of time, and then they convened for break. So essentially what she's saying is, although that she had got signed a Bad Boy for 10 albums, her main job, her main source of income was being a participant of freak offs. Because in between those events, she had to recover. And mind you, she was also being abused, so she had to wait for the bruises to heal. There was literally no time for anything else. We'll be right back.